Hi, how are you doing? Are we okay? Because the good news is we're halfway through. And then we're going to get Welsh cakes, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. Which is obviously not the only reason that I'm here, but one of them. So thank you very, very much to Ruth for giving me the excuse to come down to Wales and see my colleagues in Spice in the Welsh office. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So today I'm going to talk to you about who I am, tell you a little bit about why I'm here, talk to you about how design kind of goes into co-design, and then how co-design goes into co-production. And one of the drums that I'll be banging on is about how it's not just about the professionals. So Paul, no disrespect to him, is a professional service designer. I've worked in and around service design. I wouldn't call myself a service designer, but I know a bit about service design, and I think that there's a lot in service design that can be taken and applied in other places, done by other people, and it's really important actually for co-production. I recently started working for Spice, which is very exciting. I'm the London co-production time credits coordinator, not co-production, time credits coordinator, which is co-production. So, as Elkie was saying, time credits have been going on for a while in Wales. We're now taking the model and applying it to a London context and trying it out there and seeing how it works with London communities. I'm not going to talk much about the model, but if you're interested in finding out about Spice, there's a few of us here, and I'll be around, obviously, to talk to. But I think kind of a few of you already know about it. Before I started at Spice, there were a lot of X's on the list. So I'm ex-Design Council, ex-Nesta. So I worked at the Design Council on the Public Services by Design programme there for a little while, and then I worked at Nesta on a co-produced ageing programme, which is why Elkie thinks that I know about ageing. So yeah, working with a lot of service users and communities to design and deliver some co-produced services around retirement. That's where I've come from. So why design? Really, I just wanted to show you a few pictures of what happens when design goes wrong.
Nice one.
Yeah, not very well planned. Something that we see quite often, conflicting signage around. These are from the fail blog, by the way. They're quite funny examples of fails around design. What happens when two planning systems don't talk to each other terribly well? And my personal favourite, the Wheelchair Foundation. Service design is the process of creating new or improving existing services. And you can see what happens when it goes wrong. And obviously, as Paul said, I'm going to talk to you a bit about co-design and why co-design is important and kind of what it means, I suppose. So Paul's told you about design and service design. Co-design is a part of what designers call the design process, and really what it means is that you should design with people. It's part of co-production. It's the early bit before you get to the service delivery, where you actually think through, not on your own in a room, but you go out into the community, you get involved with people, you get people to help you design the service. And so it is involving people in designing the service. Design's really useful for this because you can make nice pictures, you can show visual representations of things and communicate ideas better. And you can try new ideas out. So you can build things, you can use plasticine, you can use Lego, you can try things out and see how they might work, role play things like that. And those are all things that designers would use. And as I was putting this presentation together, I was thinking about why it's important. And this is an example from another sector. It's not England, it's not public services, it's in Africa. It's a hugely good example of what goes wrong when you don't talk to people very well. And, you know, international development professionals would say that they, you know, if you told them about co-design, they would say they do co-design. You know, they do consultations, they go out and have kind of big village meetings with people. Well, this is an example of a fairly successful school that was built. There's lots of people, kids who are coming to the school. Sometimes it doesn't go so well, and I worked on a project where they designed a school and built it and used lots of nice funding, and nobody came to the school and they couldn't understand why, because they'd had all these meetings with the village, and they'd had a meeting with the village elder. There was this nice space and they built it, and then nobody came. And it turned out, when you actually spent some time in the village and hung out and, you know, talked to some of the mothers and spent some time with them, that actually the school was built, very tiny part of the school was on what had been an ancestral burial ground. So no one was going to go. So, you know, it's really important, basically. I won't labour the point, I'm sure you all know, but it's really important that you kind of involve people. So, co-design and co-production. What I wanted to say, I suppose, is that co-design does not equal co-production. If you do co-design, and Paul talked about this as well, if you do a co-design at the beginning, or do some co-design and talk to some people, you will not necessarily get a co-produced service. It's helpful, but you may still get a kind of top-down delivered service. I mean, if you wanted to redesign a hospital, you wouldn't necessarily, you might get some co-production, but you wouldn't necessarily get co-production going on in surgery. You know, there are different models for service delivery. And co-production is great, but I just want to make the point that they are slightly different things because there are so many co-words that go around at the moment. But obviously it can help. And this is one of the projects that I worked on at Nesta. This was using co-design to get to a co-produced service. And this was working with Age Concern Hackney in London. They had a problem with men in the area. There are lots of single pensioner households in Hackney. It's costing the council lots of money. And so they got in some people to train the people who worked in AGK in co-design to get them to think about how they could use different methods to get different results, basically. So this is a guy who they were doing some mapping with community members, mapping points that they go on a map. The next one is kind of getting people to put up ideas about what would bring people together, and they ran a kind of session, and then they turned it into something quite visual. So there were lots of ideas, and they got the ideas up so that people could have a chat about them, see what they thought might work. And then they tried out some of the ideas. So one of the favourite ideas was that the men felt they wanted to meet together, not with women, actually, which was a surprise to me. And they said. Yeah. And so they wanted to have these peer groups. So rather than kind of spend ages planning how this would work, booking a room, this kind of thing, they tried it out in the park. They didn't have an agenda. They got the men to create what they thought it should look like. And then they got these men to deliver the service to other men. And so it goes on. So, and this was done with professionals. So there were professionals involved from the council. There were professionals involved from, AGK, and some service designers helping them. Oh, everything's gone mad. So, co-designers. When you think of design, you might think of somebody who looks a bit like that. But I would argue that actually you should think of somebody who looks a bit like that. So somebody who isn't a traditional designer, but who is changing how services are designed with people. I'm not going to do that. And so really, what we're trying to do at Spice, and what a lot of people are trying to do across Wales, across England, across Scotland, is get people who are in the community to be co-designers with professionals and with people who deliver services. And I think it can be done. I think if you value people as assets, if you put a bit of trust in people and get them kind of congregating around the same idea, I'm not going to say it's always easy, I'm not going to say it's not time consuming, but I think it can be done. And I think that's what I'm looking to set up in London at the moment with the time credit scheme in the City of London and in other bits. And I think there's lots that design can bring to that process. So that's it. Thank you very much. Keep in touch. Follow me on Twitter, email me, tell me all your exciting stories, and we'll eat well cakes together soon.
Thank you very much.